Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Rob Vizzola. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Mobius Partners, and we appreciate you carving time out of your busy schedule here this Thursday morning to join us and our partner, Veem, to talk about ransomware protection and remote backups. So hopefully everyone can hear me well, and we'll go ahead and get started in respect for your schedules. I would like to first, if I can, talk to them about our presenter today. I'm going to hand off to Bryce here in just a couple minutes after I do just a very quick overview of Mobius Partners and who we are. Bryce is joining us. He's the technical partner manager and a very experienced solution architect with Veem. And he's got a long professional career with experience with several top-tier technology companies in both security and enterprise technology solutions. So we'll hand off to Bryce in a moment. Very glad that Bryce is joining us. Just a wealth of knowledge, and I think you all will find his experience and his perspective very beneficial. So with that, let me go ahead and get started. For those who are new to Mobius Partners, as far as your experience with us, I want to just give you a really quick overview. We're not going to get into a ton of detail about who we are, but certainly after this call or in the future, if you would like to learn more about us, we'd love to talk about our experience and capabilities, but we'll save that for another time. A little bit about Mobius. We've been around for quite a while. We established our organization back in 2000. We've been growing ever since, and most of our experience has been focused on enterprise and global customers. And over the recent past, we've been able to take that experience and those capabilities and share those with customers in the mid-enterprise space as well as in the SMB market. So we're going to continue to grow those relationships. Our offices are located in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. We have a presence in Austin as well. And, we pride ourselves, we call ourselves groomers because from a company philosophy, we're very customer-centric, but at the same time, we like to have, extremely positive, close relationships with our customers, and we do it in a fun way. I think anyone who's worked with us will tell you that working with Mobius has always been a fun, just pleasant experience. And we hope for those who don't know us, you get an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that. Who we are, like I said, we've been around for 20 years. One of the things we pride ourselves is being extremely focused on the sales side of what we do from a customer perspective as well as a technical perspective. We're a little different than a lot of organizations that have a ton of sales folks and then not a lot of folks that actually support the customer hands-on. We have dedicated account managers, account executives that support our customers in almost a one-to-one relationship. We have we have a lot of strength in our bench as it relates to service delivery managers as well as service delivery professionals. And from a technical perspective, we have some of the most talented, the best technical resources that you'll find in the industry. And, if you've been able to work with Mobius, I think that you'll find, or you have found, that technical expertise just to be second to none. We'll hear from a few folks today that are part of that organization, but we have just, once again, a breadth of certified solution architects across most of our partnerships, if not all of our partnerships with the top OEMs and hardware software companies. Incredibly flexible, since we're not one of the largest companies, it affords us the opportunity to be a lot more flexible, tailor solutions and what we do towards your needs, and really to think outside the box and create things that solve to unique challenges that each one of our customers face based off of their own business dynamics. We're also a certified minority-owned partner, and if that is important as it relates to your diversity spend or philosophy. From what we do on a basis of technology, there really are 4 areas that we focus on with corresponding capabilities and solutions that we offer across the board, across all those different domains. We're focused on digital workspace and everything that comes around with that from a mobility, virtualization perspective, cloud, DevOps, observability, IT automation, as well as all the data center capabilities that you would expect from an organization like ours, whether it be storage or servers, compute, networking, etc. And we wrap all that with security and analytics, strategic services, which is really our delivery and consultative services, and then managed services for those that are looking for a full-blown provider who can address or attack operational items or functions that they may not want to do themselves, that they'd really rather pass off to an organization such as ours so they can focus on more what their core strengths are, or maybe their core products. So that's a little bit about us. Wanted to make sure that was brief and quick. Hopefully it was. But once again, we would love to answer any questions you might have about Mobius Partners at some other time, or link you up with one of our account executives to have a deeper conversation. As far as logistics for today, I'm going to hand over to Bryce in just a second. If you have questions, which we want this to be somewhat interactive, we definitely want to make sure that we're answering and hitting on all the points or topics that are important to you. Please list those questions in the chat box, and we will make sure that we get to all the questions if possible by the end of the session. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bryce. And once again, Bryce, we appreciate you being here, and thank you for sharing your perspective and knowledge with this collective group of participants today.
Excellent. And I appreciate that. Thank you, Rob. And is everyone able to see my first slide?
Yep, we can see it, Bryce. Thank you.
Yes. Hey, fantastic. So a little bit to add to the intro, not a lot, but I've been in technology over 20 years. Half that time, I've been in roles in infrastructure, driving the keyboard, right? So a lot of backup recovery responsibilities and tasks, cybersecurity as well. And then in the recent 12 years of my career, I've been working to take business needs and challenges and bringing technology to bear and solve those, make life easier, give people some more restful nights. So let's jump into, and I'll talk a little bit about the company. So one of the things that stands out for me, having been someone who's been in support as well when I was in the field, is the Net Promoter Score. That's a big deal to me. The scale, if you're not familiar with it, minus 100 to positive 100. So a score of 75 is phenomenal. So you can see there, it's a measure of, would you recommend Veem to a colleague, right? To an industry peer. So that's a big deal. That's not something that we guide or steer. How we do it is by how we deliver, right? From engaging you all initially, sitting down with the field sales players from Mobius and uncovering like, what are your priorities and projects and how we can come together and help you with those things, all the way through to post-sales support, which is near and dear to my heart, which is, you own the solution. How are we taking care of you? So our customers are really big on how we go about doing that. The number here, as far as number of customers, it's actually, slide's a bit dated, so somewhere in the neighborhood of 375,000 customers. So big install base. We've been at this for 14 plus years. How we made our name is actually within the VMware space with VMware Instant Recovery. And since that time, and a lot of its advances, and a lot of it is culminated in our version 10, which is only a few months out in the wild, but we've already seen great adoption of it, and we're solving business needs and meeting challenges with that today. So without talking about, I can't talk about what's upon us and what Veem brings to the table and offers you in the area of data availability and protecting the remote worker if we didn't talk about the reality and some of the challenges that I faced when I was working as a backup admin. And I'm sure some of these will, connect with you, or hopefully not strike a nerve. I'm not looking to unsettle anybody, but the legacy backup systems, just having disparate data geographically with different SLAs tied to it, different maybe RPOs, RTOs. A lot of shops have more than one, what I would call BRA, backup recovery archival solution. I mean, we're software only, and I don't want to preempt myself. I'll get into talking more about that and the benefits there. The idea of having a backup system comprised of three simple components, right? Some means of a catalog or schedule component, a data mover, and a backup repository, as I call it, or others may call it, a backup target. Well, having multiples of those for maybe what is a geodispersed organization, can create a lot of challenges and headaches. They all have their own patch maintenance, update cycle. The FTE, those in your shop that actually drive those keyboards, they have to stay current. What we bring to bear is a means to have one platform that makes life a lot easier and goes beyond just what I would call the traditional backing up data, being able to restore it when needed, but finding more value in the data that you own in your organizations. So it would not be a Veeam conversation if I didn't talk about the 3-2-1-0 rule. So again, you see there depicted a VM. We want to have multiple copies, right? It's belts and suspenders, as I like to call it. I also think about backups are important, but restores are priceless. And I'll get into some of the war stories, and I think they'll connect with you. 2 different types of media, right? And then 1 offsite copy, could be air gapped, but with the ease in which we make cloud be part of your overall business continuance or data mobility plan, I think you'll want to take a look at that. You may already have cloud as a component to those 2 initiatives within your organization. And then lastly, the 0 there. We've probably all been there or had members of our teams where they have an important backup that needs to happen. It gets to 98% complete and then it fails. That's not uncommon, especially for restoring from a secondary site or even a cloud or even cloud. At Veeam, we've got some mechanisms to alleviate that, if not eliminate it, and make it simpler. So I'm not going to talk about every icon on the screen, but the point of the screen is that any configuration you may have, if you're dabbling with SaaS, you're using O365 today. If you do have cloud, whether it's AWS or Azure in your organization, you're using compute in the cloud, or maybe you're just using storage there, whether you're server virtualized with VMware or Hyper-V. The point of this slide is we can be in path in the backup path for all those many technologies for whatever your estate encompasses, whether it's headquarters or your robo facilities as well. So what we've sought out to do, and I think we've accomplished it, is everyone wants the means to be able to get their data protected and recovered and made available when and where they need it in a quick fashion, right? They want it easy. We don't want any limitations on, well, first I've got to restore to this specific storage medium or to this specific site before I can act on it and get it ultimately to the business unit or the actual people needing to act upon a project file or a set of data that is for a database. We are a large way simplifying and making portable those backups, even beyond the point of making them available to ingest or mount to a given server. But when it comes to VMs, they're bootable as they are and they can be used immediately. And then reliability, really that in part why I showed that slide about Veeam. The NetPS score just speaks to the reliability. People love us and they talk to us. We have a lot of reference customers and use cases that can be referenced, and we can dig into that deeper with your Mobius account teams. So the Veeam availability suite, I'm going to talk about concepts and needs, but I will touch on the products as we go through this. So with our availability suite version 10, you can see there are 100 plus new features. So some of them are very granular and some of them are actually significant in that they change the way in which people look at protecting data, inclusive of restoring it or recovering it. And those are highlighted there with the NAS backup, which I will talk to that in a little bit different way. Instant VM recovery for certain, and then some strategies to protect against ransomware, malware, and other bad actors. So speaking of portability and flexibility, and again, I mentioned I love options. So this is significant in that with any VMware backup, wherever that resides, or any Veeam backup, wherever it resides, we can bring those back into vSphere. We can bring them back aggregately, simultaneously. This makes things a lot simpler. Just thinking about classical 3-tier application, web, app, and database, we can bring them together in vSphere quickly and easily. Maybe there's some cloud compute that then is protected in your cloud of choice. That data needs to be made available, not as live output, if you will, to then have some further reporting analysis done on what a compute job had completed, but maybe it just needs to be brought into the four walls of your organization, and it needs to be another landscape, if you will, thinking about like an ERP system, right? You want to have production, it's running in the cloud, you're leveraging the compute, but you need a copy of production to do some pre-production development. Another scenario would be maybe there's something that drew the attention of your SecOps team, and they're not ready to just shut down or unplug access to some cloud compute that's running, but what they rather do is, hey, can we get a copy of production, put it in a sandbox, separate it away from the rest of the estate, dig in and let our forensics folks look to see if there's something that warrants disconnecting access to the production environment in the cloud. And then certainly there's DR and just ease of migration capabilities, whether you're going from cloud to on-prem, which could be your virtualized server environment, it could be physical. But these are the different options, and I've only touched on a few that allow you to move backup data around and use it quickly and easily. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I've got a baseball kid and a softball kid. Now I'm jumping into unstructured data. So this is unstructured data. This is like the floor of the back office of a comic store, and just strewn with thousands and thousands of baseball cards. This could actually be my son or daughter's bedspreads. Although my daughter was like, I don't see any, softball gals in these cards. So we'll table that for now, and I'll come back to it. So who knows what's in here, right? Unstructured data. Maybe there's some Hall of Fame players. Maybe in this collection there's a Nolan Ryan or a Pudge Rodriguez, but we don't know. It's unstructured data, just like all the file data you have within your organization. So we go at it a little bit differently. So on the left, what does a NAS backup look like with everyone else, and why? So what it looks like is a snapshot of that big mess spread out all over the floor of the baseball cards. And why is it that way? Because companies that are doing NAS backup for their arrays and appliances, they're using a 20-plus-year-old protocol called NDMP. So it's a limiting factor. So what we've done is we've taken away the limitation and the forced manner in which trying to back up a file share being tied to hardware. We're software. We made it easy. So our approach is there on the right. So I don't know if I hit anybody's favorite ball players. I don't know how many people are baseball fans, but I won't digress too much. But I've got an MLB baseball in a plastic case signed by Commissioner Mumford with a Post-it note on top, screaming, "Let me out." So let me keep rolling, and let me talk about the details as to what we're accomplishing and how we are as I talk about what file share backup looks like today. So I mentioned that it's a 20-year-old protocol that's got everybody else hamstrung. And let's just talk about the reality of what that really means. So when we have file shares in our environment and we need to get a backup, maybe there's several hundred gig, maybe there's several terabytes in size. Well, with what predating this solution from Veeam, we got to back it all up. right? So translation, we're doing full backups as frequently as we can do them. Now, having been in, like as I said, in infrastructure and worked with storage solutions, a lot of times those NAS backups, they sit on the same primary storage. They're called snapshots. So they chew up that very expensive storage that we bought, we put in place to serve IO to our applications to keep our user communities and the business happy, right? That's one drawback. The other aspect there is we got to have a backup target. Okay, so we're going to start chewing 1 terabyte chunks out of our backup storage. And what about the bandwidth and elapsed time to get a full backup to complete? How long does that take? More often than not, those jobs aren't going to fit in a backup window, and they're aborted or they're killed off. You know, they don't complete. On average, what studies show is maybe a week to two, from 1 week to every 2 weeks, a file share backup gets completed. So we looked at that, we rethought the whole approach, and we re-engineered it. So we've implemented what we call change file tracking. So to give an example, let's just use my documents, real simple, right? So my documents, and then there's a subfolder for marketing, and then there's a subfolder here for marketing, and then a subfolder here for engineering drawings, let's say. Well, Will's updated an engineering drawing, and that shows us kind of that pathway, because we're fingerprinting all the files that change, so we have that uniqueness to then only back up what has changed. So for those of you familiar with VMware or other technologies, VMware having change block tracking for years, this is very similar to that. So the net of this approach is, oh my goodness, we're actually able to get incremental backups of file shares. That's insane. So then we've just alleviated and done away with that week to 2 week exposure of nothing gets backed up. And better yet, we can restore a file quickly and close to the time of which it was deleted, because we know this never happened. We'll ask in a traditional NAS appliance or array, he asks for a file. I need my spreadsheet, my engineering drawing from last Sunday. It takes all that time that it does tell, and then Will tells us as the backup admin, yeah, no, that doesn't include what I need. We're going to have to go to I need one from 2 weeks ago. And then we play that game. So never any fun, a lot of headaches, a lot of elapsed time goes by, and our end users just get super frustrated. So last here on the NAS backup talk, you can see there no file locks, because that hamstrings being able to get a backup. How we alleviate that is we work with the storage vendors. Again, we're storage agnostic, we're compute agnostic. We'll take a storage snapshot from whomever your storage vendor is. We'll run our backup of the incremental changes off that. We're totally out of band from your NAS filer serving data back to your user communities and keeping the business humming. So now let's jump into what we can do on the endpoints, right? And how this ties back to interest around really Defenseindepth. And my thinking is Defenseindepth absolutely includes the backup recovery archival systems that we have in our shops, right? Because how I think of it is IP, right? That the lifeblood of the company, what's most important is really data, right? It lives on storage. Well, what's the insurance policy for that storage? It's how we back it up. And more importantly, how can we recover it? And how quickly we can recover it, and how comprehensively can we recover it. So with our agents for both Linux and Windows, whether your endpoint is in the cloud and an infrastructure as a service, whether it's a workstation in someone's cubicle, and for a lot of us, right, even some of those workstations have actually been moved to our homes with the current circumstance we're all living in. and then certainly laptops. Because our backup files are portable, those backups can actually be leveraged in multiple clouds, right? Or from cloud to cloud. Maybe your organization is using a private cloud inside the four walls of your hosted data center, but they're also using Azure or Azure Cloud or AWS Cloud. There's that portability to where you back it up and to where you restore it from. With our reporting and monitoring solution, we can give you visibility across all those many backups, regardless of where the data actually rests. So that gives that holistic view. It gives you dashboards and alerts and shows you, red, green, yellow, where attention may need to be placed, where more bandwidth may be needed, where there is, resources being chewed up on a given server that may need more attention after the fact. And then sticking with the flexibility, being able to restore to any location. Again, because the VBKs, the actual, and the other associated files that comprise a Veeam backup, they're portable. We're not doing something unique for Linux compared to Windows, compared to infrastructure in the cloud. And then lastly, when it comes to the agents, it allows you to stay within compliance, whatever the compliance regime for your respective industries has put upon you. You have the data backed up, you have it protected, it's encrypted at rest. These sorts of things leave you in a good way with your compliance officers. So getting a little deeper into it, managed mode or standalone mode, I'm going to actually walk through a standalone mode, but certainly when you're talking about large scale or large number of endpoints, you would leverage our Veeam backup and replication server, and in this construct of a protection group, which the next slide, I'll go into that and talk to how do you deploy and configure en masse, right? When it comes to standalone, it's what it sounds like. It's clicking on an MSI and next finishing through the guided steps. It's super simple, but then it leaves you with the means of keeping the data protected. And I'll talk about how we keep the source data, if you will, or target data, your laptop, and what are the options for protecting the backup as to the where. So with protection group, you have the ability through the VBR console, the Veeam Backup Replication Console, to chunk the, let me back up one. Yeah, there you go. So to chunk or organize the endpoints by the one, if you wanted to, individual computers. Most people are going to use AD objects or AD, form their groups that way because they already have the groups, marketing, engineering, and so forth. Certainly there's a way to ingest a CSV file where someone's done a lot of quasi spreadsheet work, but most people are going to leverage AD and just create those protection groups to push these agents out and get the data protected. Now this is kind of cool. What we're able to do is when it comes to deployment, we're able to actually scour per the mode you've chosen and look for new systems that are out there, kind of test them. I liken to this kind of the flip side of installing cybersecurity software and endpoints, right? They often, and especially when it comes to being able to allowing to VPN connect, right? They're all going to check, okay, do you have AV software or better on that laptop? If so, are the definition files current? Do you have a backup recovery agent on that laptop, or is there a means of remote control? Is it enabled, right? So there's some compliance tests to allow for VPN. This is kind of the flip side. This is ensuring that you don't have a laptop or endpoint in your estate that is not protected by Veeam, because we don't want that kind of exposure. And then there's certainly, when you have high latency, low bandwidth links, there's a means to it's put in place. And then you could also see here, I'd already touched on VPN, being able to allow or disallow activity for the backups to take place. basically keeping everything secure from at rest through the transmission back to the repository, whether that's cloud or inside the four walls of a data center. So backup job types, I'll touch on these. They each effectively have profiles. We make some delineation between servers versus workstations. The one thing to note here is that a failover cluster is going to be managed by a backup server. The split is managed by the backup server or managed by an agent. But they do allow for either approach, you're able to send the data, the backup data, to a centralized repository. And we'll get into some of the other options when we're talking about managed by agent. So just to show you what the splash screen is, we've all seen it click through a EULA. So what I did, this is actually installing the Veem agent right on my Windows 10 laptop. I'll go ahead and click through this. There's not a lot of super excitement. Again, how I think of it is all the complexity and the phenomenal engineering is under the covers and delivers your data back quickly and easily to you. That complexity is not in installing any of our software. If a person can right click or next finish, it's all good. So here, just the different modes quickly. Backing up the entire computer, picking data volumes versus others with the volume level backup, and then file level backup. So these settings do have bearing on the granularity of the restore. So that's something to keep in mind. This is what I really wanted to get to here. So when we're talking about the laptop in the field, like I am here now, I can use local storage, but then I'm the custodian of corporate data on a USB connected drive. When I'm at the network or able to connect to the network, where I did choose shared folder, basically a file share, that's open to me as well. So the Veem backup and repository, that's our centralized, again, think of it as the backup target. When we're wanting to leave ourselves with belts and suspenders, or we don't have, like most of us now, shared folder and backup repository, we're not signing in at our corporate networks. If we are, it's VPN. So yes, we can do that. Maybe the company's approach would be, hey, we've got space in OneDrive. Let's use that for a portion of the corporate laptops or all of them, depending on the arrangement that the company has with OneDrive, with Microsoft. And then scheduling, it's like one would expect anything, setting the date, time, the frequency, the retention policy. Those are the kind of standard settings you would have with a backup recovery solution. And that's just simply a screen that shows the completion of that job. So now I'm going to put some graphics in front of you. Night and day, Tom Cruise, Cameron Diaz. What this is about, jumping into protecting Microsoft 365. There's some understanding about what Microsoft does, but maybe more or a lack of understanding of what they do not do as it comes to protecting your data. So with Veem, there's your retention policies. And what I've learned, if anything, having worked in infrastructure and backup recovery, and then implementing cloud solutions, whether it's just to have backups to the cloud or SaaS, as I'm talking here with Microsoft 365, yeah, users expect the restores to work as easily and simply as they were when everything was inside your four walls of your organization. They don't really care what you have to do to get their PowerPoint back, their vector drawing, the spreadsheet that a team of people had worked on end of last year. So we give our customers complete control of their Microsoft 365 data. And in fact, when we look at the without me, Microsoft's SLA, and you can read it in the Trust Center, they actually come out and they spell it out in clear language that the user's data is the user's responsibility. Their SLA is pegged to the platform and the application availability. not to how long they keep data around for you as their customer, if you're there now or potentially thinking of it. So like when I talked about, that project plan from end of last year that looks very similar to a new initiative, and you've got people collaborating, they can't get back to what that project plan and the Gantt chart looked like and the associated spreadsheets because their data's already been whacked off of the OneDrive or SharePoint. When it comes to Inbox has a longer duration, but if we're talking about e-discovery, those sorts of things, who wants to wait for someone else to be able to recover the data so that it can be made available to a magistrate for pending hearing or something? So again, they're all about the platform, we're all about the data. And then just to quickly walk through this, what am I showing? So from right to left, these are all the locations in which your data for O365 can reside. So whether it's in a Veeam backup repository, whether you're leveraging cloud, or if you actually have a local cache repo, the process for getting those files back first starts with an Explorer. It looks like Windows Explorer. And so for each of the respective applications, Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive, you have the means of exploring by date and time, by individual, if we're talking email, by project folder name, by the entire share, and get to what you want to restore, as granular as bringing back an email as a new PST or even the message file itself. Now, when the restore is occurring, you could restore it right back to the cloud, or you could restore it to your on-prem Exchange or SharePoint. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention automation, integration. We've got APIs for all of that to make life simpler and programmatic. Just wanted to put this up, touched on what we can do with Exchange. The point of this is a lot of flexibility. It's your data. You've got your relationship with Microsoft. They're keeping things up and running. We're making it easy to back up and restore the data just as it were if it were on-prem with Exchange or on SharePoint or the others. Okay, this is a little bit tightened up of a graphic, I admit to you. What I'll say is this is taken from the Black Report. What is the Black Report? 2018, they interviewed at DEF CON, one of the big hacker conventions in Las Vegas, 217 hackers. They gave them the option to work and submit their answers to the questionnaire on a kiosk or pen and paper. None of them, they all use pen and paper. So this isn't to scare you, this is just to give you a sense of how easily and how quickly the hackers, or call it cyber criminals, hacker is kind of a flashier word, how quickly they can get into like breaching the perimeters less than an hour as an example. Exfiltrating the data, the range is 20% or near 20% of them 5 to 10 hours. And then you can see here by all these verticals, by all these industries, they take those similar measures to kind of give a characterization of what they're doing and how quickly they're doing it. So again, it goes back to just driving home that Defenseindepth absolutely involves the backup recovery strategy. So I'll give you an example, case in point. So I'm here in Houston, Texas, working with an energy company. So they let me know on a Friday evening that they had seen like a runaway write in the environment and it was increasing at an increasing rate. And it's like, oh yeah, that's encryption. You're getting hit. Whether it was WannaCry or CryptoLocker, one of the ransomwares, right? Because that's the game. Encrypt it and then, ransom you for the key to decrypt it. So, their leadership decided to pay the ransom on a Saturday. They got that over through secure channels, and they proceeded to go to their backup solution. This was not Veem, and they did backups of their bare metal boxes, their virtualized systems, and that completed somewhere Tuesday a.m. So Wednesday, not even lunchtime yet, I got a call from my admin over there, and he's saying, we got hit again. And I'm like, what do you mean? he said, we're right back where we started. And so they had some incident response folks on site at the time. It took them a while to fly out, which is another story, another conversation for another day. And what they uncovered is that they restored the exploit right back into the environment. So average dwell time can be of an exploit can be 40 days to 4 months, and some studies have it as far out as 8 months that it could be sitting and waiting for the cyber criminal to initiate. So I said all that to get to this. Paint this out for you. So with Veeam, the performance tier, think about it this way. You've got your primary storage, however that's attached to your servers. The performance tier, you're going disk to disk, disk to disk to tape. How about disk to disk to cloud or disk to cloud? When we're talking leveraging Veeam S3, whether that's Amazon or S3 compatible, you get the benefit of immutable backups through the file locking mechanism in S3. What does that mean? That means no one in your shop, disgruntled employee, can go in and make changes to that data. I can't, as a Veeam employee, make any changes to your data. Someone in Veeam support, nobody can make changes to that data. So think of it as a golden backup. That is your way to get back to whole. Leveraging that leaves you with the assurance that you're not going to end up like my energy customer, and I'm sure hundreds of others who restore the exploit right back into their environment. Here's just this view of our console, the console itself, showing that we give you the flexibility to restore the full VM. You can restore just the OS files. You can even get down into the application items. And then we, again, keeping with our flexibility and portability, you can export the disk, or you can back up an export. Again, flexibility. It's your data. Let's make it available how you need and want it to simplify life. With the capacity tier, which is what I showed depicted there on the far right of those 2 slides back, that's cloud. Absolutely, you can back up and protect to Azure Blob, but know this, that doesn't have the file locking immutability feature, but it is giving you that offsite copy, right, in a 3-2-1 strategy. How we work with whatever cloud provider you're using today or considering using, know this, that we are backing up only the data blocks that need to be moved across the wire back and forth, if that makes sense. So we have the metadata, which is the data about the data. So we know both at the destination and the source what's been sent across the wire. So if you have 700 gig file, high probability, well, I know there's no way we're going to send, unless you're doing the initial seeding, that whole file doesn't have to go over to the cloud every time you run a full. We're just going to send what changed, and beyond that, we're going to only send what blocks aren't in the block mapping. Sorry, I get a little deep nerd on that, but know that you have that. So people like here, people will call that the cloud tax, right? So I think you get it, right? Once upon a time, we had spinning electrical meters, and anytime my kids would fire up a game system or have a LAN party, if people remember those and can relate, that spinning meter from the electric provider will be like a flywheel going 100 miles an hour. Well, we end that because we're very efficient with what we move or copy and when we do so. And again, everything's software, so I'm not a fanboy or cheerleading for Amazon or Blob. I'm cheering for what is the best fit for you and your organization. Talked about immutable storage, which is the file locking and present in S3. I also talked about the 3-2-1 strategy and how cloud fits into that. I didn't explicitly hit this.
I was like, how are they still on the call?
So encryption at rest, it's AES 256-bit. That's good to know. And then when you're doing transmission through S3, it's encrypted for sure. When you're making those backups and restores to the cloud, they're protected in that manner. That's what I had for you. My daughter's, she pressed on me because I didn't have any softball ladies in the fan out of all those thousands of cards. So I did right by her and put a photo of University of Tennessee, Monica Abbott, also Team USA, and she plays 30 minutes from her house. Really appreciate your time. I hope you found this beneficial. Happy to visit with you and answer any questions. Okay, Aaron, I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to you. And again, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with everybody.
Hey, Bryce. Thank you so much. This is Aaron Malinowski from Mobius Partners, Practice Manager of Cloud Integration here. Thank you very much, Veem, for feeding some of our viewers and providing this awesome information. And Bryce, thank you for elaborating on the remote workforce backup capabilities. That whole anytime, anywhere strategy is very good for our customer base. And I'll tell you what, the NAS backup definitely hit home for me. I've been in many situations where having to restore that entire volume is definitely painful, and we appreciate those very interesting capabilities in version 10. So thank you.